Just give me a quick second. Okay, so hello everyone. So we're gonna cover up another topic for today's session. So we're gonna run through the module 10. So this is our last topic in the course or the program. So after this, we're gonna have a. So that's the last module that we cover up as a part of the entire course session, right? So tomorrow's session for this week, will be the last, and tomorrow we're gonna cover up the a recap version of the overall course module and the important aspects, right? Just to kind of brush up the entire course module, right? So let's go ahead with traceability matrix. So traceability matrix is kind of not an RPA domain related kind of topic. So, but yeah, traceability metrics, as we learned about the change management last week, right? And change management is again a part of the ITIL concept, which was dragged back into the RPA platform, in order to kind of maintain the RPA life cycle and how to deal with changes and stuffs like that. So similarly, a traceability matrix is a document that correlates any two baseline documents that require a many-to-many relationship to check the completeness of the relationship. It is used to track the requirements and to check the current project requirements are met or not. So traceability matrix is nothing but eventually it's a document that is maintained either by the project manager along with the business analyst in an entire RPA lifecycle process, right? So the document is used to keep track of the requirements, the entire requirements that are needed to be covered up as a part of the project, and also to check that the current work or the development that is going on, uh, is always meeting up the project requirements. So for example, if it's a longer project and let's say 2-3 developers are assigned to develop a bot, so they must be working in integration along with each other, right? In collaboration with each other. So whatever code they develop, that needs to be integrated, tested, right? So in those cases, it's very important that you keep a track of the current progress of the project as in line with your requirements. So it should not be something that the requirements are something and the development of the product is happening as something else. So that's why it's very important to have a traceability matrix to kind of baseline the documentation and check the relationship between the progress of the project in alignment with the current requirement. So what is requirements traceability matrix? So requirements traceability matrix, or RTM, captures all requirements proposed by the client or software development team and their traceability in a single document delivered at the conclusion of the life cycle. And we can say that, in other words, a requirement traceability matrix is a document that maps and traces user requirements with test cases. Again, so RTM, or user requirements traceability matrix, is very, very important. The main purpose of RTM is to see that covered so that no should miss while doing the software testing. Now, the traceability matrix is the document which will have all the major impact, all the requirements of the project, and also the current status as we move ahead with the project development work. With RTM, it's similarly the same concept of having all the requirements traced in a proper document, but it gives you an additional benefit of tracing the test cases as well. Now, what is the test case? We already know that in UAT, and when we do a testing plan and all those things, we have understood that we need the dummy set of data. We need to test each and every activity or each and every case that we develop. So, for example, if a bot is logging into an Outlook, if a bot is trying to fetch, download an invoice from an email, these are the activities which are need to be tested as a test case, right? So each test case has to be passed in order for the bot to complete the execution or to pass the integration testing or the unit testing or the UAT that the client or the business is going to do. So RTM is a document that also keeps a track of all the test cases in alignment with the requirements, so that when the requirements are complete or the development is complete and we kind of test the bot, we also mark the test cases pass or failure, in a proper manner, so that the entire traceability matrix gets completed. Okay. Now, traceability test metrics are generally of three types. Okay, one is forward traceability, another is backward or reverse traceability, and the third one is bidirectional traceability. Now, what is the forward traceability? This matrix is used to check whether the project progresses in the desired direction and for the right product. Now, when the projects are going ahead, right? So let's say you have the requirements, you have the design, you have the solutioning, you have the development, you have the testing, you have the implementation, and then you have the maintenance. So that's the entire RPA lifecycle process. Now, the forward traceability metrics helps you to check or keep an track of the project progressing in a forward direction into the same hierarchy that I've just said for the right product. So that means we have to ensure that each and every phase, all the developers are working towards the same requirement and there is no deviation. Okay. It makes sure that each requirement is applied to the product and that each requirement is tested thoroughly. It maps requirements to test cases. So the impact of forward traceability is to map the requirements to the test cases. Okay. So if my requirements are, if I have 10 requirements, I should have similar amount of test cases and my project is moving in a forward direction. Nothing go back. Okay. Now, what is a backward or a reverse traceability? Now, it is used to ensure whether the current product remains on the right track. Similarly, the purpose behind this type of traceability is to verify that we are not expanding the scope of the project by adding code, design templates, test or other work that is not specified in the requirements. This also helps to map test cases to requirements. Now, reverse or back traceability is again a traceability part which tracks the progression, but this is sometimes done to ensure that as we move ahead, we did not deviate or we did not expand the scope of the project by, let's say, if there are 3 4 developers who are working on the same project, generally it's very rare in RPA. You won't find that scenario, but yes, if the project is huge, the billing is going to be high, so the project manager might need additional hands, so 3 4 developers might be working, but this happens very much on a software development lifecycle. In an application development, 7 8 developers will be working. Somebody is working on database development, somebody is working on interface development, like this. But yes, in RPA this reverse traceability is very less, but still you should be aware of the concept. So we should not be expanding anything by adding a code. Let's say we have a requirement of 10 activities somebody has developed which is out of requirement and has exceeded the normal current requirement. So that should not be happening. Any design element should not be added. The test cases or any other work should not be deviated. So regular traceability of the completed work is also very important. So if I'm getting a work done today, we go back and check whether today's work has everything in place or not. So that's called as reverse traceability. Okay. Now, what is bidirectional? This traceability matrix ensures that all the requirements are covered by the test cases. It analyzes the impact of a change in requirement affected by the defect in a work product and vice versa. Now, let's say when you are working towards the development or in a forward traceability process, your test cases need to be met. If so, bidirectional traceability helps you to check your test cases are proper, there is no failure, and also if there are any changes in requirement that are coming, how much impact that going to have in your current development. So let's say at the development phase, after 10 days the client has changed the requirement, okay, which is very obvious, it might happen. The client would say, hey, no, 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 we're going to not do like this, we're going to do like this. This is how the process is expecting it to be done. So you are changing the requirement, which is going back to the developer. So if any such cases happens, so bi-directional traceability will help. Is again the documentation method where you try to analyze what's going to be the impact based on the current progression of the work, if there are any future or further changes or in requirement that's happening. Or let's say the developers are working, okay, and there's a defect that is coming in, so certain portion of the bot is not being worked in a proper way. A test case has failed, a defect has been identified, so there might be certain requirement changes that needs to be done, in terms of the coding and in terms of the solution. So what impact that's going to have is what we do in, trace under a bi-directional traceability. So any questions on this, guys, from anyone?
Yes, I do have some question. Now, with this traceability test metrics, do we do as we move along with the project, or is this something that we do at the end of the project?
No, no, no. So this is something we do at the along with the project. So once your documentations are complete, you have your requirements in place,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your development work gets started, your traceability gets started. Because if it's a collaboration of 4 to 5 developers who are creating a board, your
Mm-hmm.
traceability becomes very, very important, because keeping a track of each and every activity being allocated. So it's like, if let's say if we have a project where four developers are creating the bot, so the entire development or the entire solution has definitely been segregated between sorry, among 4 people, right? So the 4 developers are individually working, so the integration of the code is very important. So a developer one activity should not be repeated by developer two, right? Because that's a waste of time. So
Mm-hmm.
rather doing that, what we do is we keep a traceability of the project, which is actually done by the project manager in alignment with the business analyst as well, okay, where we see that the activities assigned individually are done completely, so that when we integrate the code, it becomes complete. So let's say I have a 10 steps of solution that needs to be developed, so which I have, kind of distributed among four developers. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that you will always have an equal number of activities, right? So 10 divided by 4, so somebody might have 3 3 3 and 1, something like that. So ensuring that, all the activities and all the solutions individually given are developed in line, so that when the code integration happens, when you call the code repository, so where the developer one code is finishing, the developers two code is picking up for the next step, the developer three's code is picking up from the next step where the developer two's code is finishing, and finally the final step is going to happen. So the importance of segregating the work is to kind of cover up the time. So if your project's deadline is very, very near, it's very tough for one individual to develop. That's why project manager might add up additional hands in order to complete the task, but he has to ensure that the traceability of the project is taken care, because 4 developers might, mess up things as well. So
Okay.
that's where your traceability becomes very, very important.
Another question. Now,
Mhm.
I can see we have like three options here: the forward one, the backward or reverse, and bi-directional. Do we choose any of that, or do we do all three?
So actually that's scenario based, right? So that depends upon who is the, how the project manager is driving the project. Okay. So if any scenario arises, there's no particular rule or method that you follow all the three. These are
Mhm.
three different types that you can add. So if, let's say, as I said, the
At any
backward
time.
or yeah, as I said, that the backward or the reverse traceability is not that prominent in RPA, because generally we don't uh, tend to expand the scope of the project, because it remains not that complex compared to your application development, where you have to take care of a lot of stuffs. But yes, it's not that you don't have to take care of a lot of stuffs in RPA development. You do have to take care, but reverse or backward traceability happens only when there is something, if the project manager thinks, okay, we are expanding or we are deviating from the scope of the project, some developer has developed something else which is not in alignment with the solution, then he or she has to go and kind of, they have to start reviewing what has been developed, from where they have gone wrong, where exactly the changes are required to be made so that it matches the current requirement. So these are all situational based documentation that you do. You might not be doing a reverse traceability for an entire project. Let's say your sprint 2 is where your second release of the project, your developer has gone a bit wrong, so you might have done a reverse traceability, whereas your sprint 1, 3 and 4 was not involved for a reverse traceability because everything went smooth. So there's no hard and fast rule, you go ahead with all three. It's just that when you do anything similarly, obviously, when your scope of the project is changing, the purpose of the project manager or the business analyst is to bring the scope back, ask the developer to make the changes, so that the whatever we are trying to meet the business requirement, that is met, and all your. So obviously when your scope is going beyond, it will not your code will not match with your test cases, but the test cases are the ones which is going to be the ones which will give you the guarantee that yes, whatever requirement is given by the client, we are able to
Test it.
meet each. Yes,
Okay,
we are
good.
able to meet each and every requirement that is shared to us. So that's why your bi-directional traceability. So you may not be knowing the term, but yes, if there is a defect that is coming, if there is a bug, a developer is going and fixing it, we are analyzing how much time it's going to take, what is the requirement, okay, why it has gone wrong. So all these things we're going to do, but we don't know that that's called as bi-directional traceability. So these
Okay,
are just, yeah, these are just the terminologies which you should be aware of, that yes, if I do anything like this in a project, that's called as bi-directional,
I
because
get you.
I'm analyzing the impact and the change in requirements.
Okay, good. Now, do you have any sample traceability matrix, test matrix that
Oh
you could
yes,
share with?
I think, yeah, I let me just kind of quickly check that. I think, yeah, I should be sharing one traceability documentation. Yes, I do have it. Yeah, I'm gonna show it after the. I just opened it up, so I'll just share it once we cover up the topic, so that we can have a look into a demo visibility
Okay.
kind of a stuff. Yeah,
All right, good.
traceability.
Thank you.
Perfect. Right. So moving on from here. So traceability metrics on an RPA platform. So whatever we have learned till now, is your generic traceability metrics concept, which is applied not only in RPA but even in a software development lifecycle. But in order to have a traceability matrix within RPA, what does it take? Similarly, we're going to see the repetition of the meaning or the definition, but in alignment with RPA, how do we do it, right? So a traceability matrix is nothing but a tool to monitor change in our, okay. So what does it mean? So a tool that helps to keep track of the requirements through your life cycle, helping to ensure that the approved requirements are satisfied by your delivered solution. So whatever requirement is approved, your delivered solution is able to meet that requirement. So that's what is a traceability matrix. Now, why do we need it? Maps all the requirements with deliverables, yes, reducing the risk that one requirement or deliverable is forgotten. Very, very important. So when your requirements are huge and complex, it's better to keep a track of it. Might be you have missed out a requirement case, you might have missed out one of the deliverables, then it's the end of story, right? So your bot will not be performing as expected. So that's why it comes into picture. Now gives the ability to trace the progress from requirements to test cases and go live materials procedure. Yes, so entire project timeline, starting from your timeline to your test cases to your development to your solution to your go live into production, everything can be maintained one shot in one documentation, which is the traceability metrics. Helps maintaining a versioning of the business requirement, makes easier to identify all the tasks that are impacted by the change. Again, yes, so if a lot of changes are happening to the requirement, you definitely need a versioning of your system, right? The version controlling is very, very important for a developer who codes. So today he might have developed one portion of the code, but tomorrow he might change a certain portion of the code, but tomorrow's portion changed might bring up a new error, so he need to roll back to the previous version which he has developed yesterday. So that's why there's something called as commit and rollback, for a developer. And repositories are very, very important, where we track the version controlling. For example, we use GitHub, we use TFS, we use SBN. So there are a lot of online tools that are available. But across the globe, git github is considered to be the parent of all the repositories that are available. And across the globe, or any developer would prefer to use github. And organizations also have now github accounts where they use their github as the repositories to store their codes and everything. So this is where your this thing comes into picture for development perspective on for example, right? Then ensures that the scope of the project is not expanded. Obviously we have just got to know that, and the use cases are not specified, and we are not doing anything which is not specified in the requirements documentation. Now who does it? For documenting, BA with the support of deliverables responsible. So in RPA, generally your project manager might kind of tell you to keep a track of the traceability matrix along with your deliverables people. So whoever, you have to work with everybody. So when the project is in a solution phase, it's the solutioning guys. When it's in a requirements gathering phase, it's the operation guys. When it's in a development phase, it's the developer. When it's an implementation phase, it's the implementation engineer you need to work with. And when it goes to support or maintenance, it's the support team with which you're gonna work with to an extent, right? Now, after that, when do we use it? Throughout the project, starting with the project approval. So there's no specific time frame that we start using traceability. It's started at the very beginning of the project, so that you're, once you have the project approval, you are maintaining everything in the documentation. Now, how do we do it? So we identify all the deliverables according to the company's implementation methodology and build a template. And I'm going to show you how the template looks like. Split all the requirements into smaller sub processes, exceptions, business rules, and map them with the deliverables. Documentation helps you to split it. You have the requirements separately. Under requirement, if you have any sub process, that you define it. If you have any equivalent exception, any equivalent business rule, you keep a tab for it, and you maintain or track each and every deliverables against each other. Continuously update the status and changes to make sure that the deliverables are provided accordingly. Analyze the deviation. So the moment the work is complete, ensure the statuses are updated. If there is any delay, ensure you are putting the status with a comment that, hey, okay, so requirements are not being confirmed by the project manager or by the client, so there is a delay. Okay, so something like that. So with the tool, it's actually a simple Excel file. Okay, so let's check how does a traceability matrix looks like. So this is a sample, which is shared as per UiPath standard, but yes, companies might go ahead and change it. So if you could see here, it's just an Excel file which starts with certain phases, as I told you, right? So you have to start working with your requirements to your solutioning to build to development. So that's why each and every tab is created. So the entire, when the project is in solution phase, right? So this is where you're going to work. So your solutioning part becomes, okay, let me just enable this sheet for editing. So the sheet is divided into multiple phases, right? So when you are working in a solutioning phase, so this is where you're going to be. So your solutioning design, so this is where you would be tracking everything unless and until your project moves from solutioning to build. Okay, so we have your IDs. ID in the sense you might number each and every process or requirement with an ID. If anything sub process is there, you have to kind of mention it here. Any relevant ID. So if you are marking it as an A, client identification sub process, then you can mark it as A 0.1.01, since it's a sub process. Any correlated activity, what is the priority of that activity, right? And then we start with the solutioning. So what is the status of solutioning of that activity? What is the base deadline? What is the due date? What is the actual date? What is the status? So let's say inside solution you have sub processes. For example, as is process map. So we already know what is an as is process map. That is to come from your business team. So for as is process map, you are having a status, baseline due date, actual delivery date. So you are tracking it here. Video recording. So sometimes we ask for a recording session of the entire process from the business. So that also
Paul,
you. Mhm.
which screen are you showing currently?
Oh, okay. You are not able to see. Oh, sorry.
I'm seeing sample test case.
Okay, okay. One second. Okay, let me start resharing. Hey, hope you are able to see an Excel file now, right?
Oh, because I was like, am I?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I was
Seeing my
not
own stuff.
noticing. Yeah. Okay, so this is was the document I was talking about, right? So this is how your traceability documentation looks like. It's just an Excel file, you can say. But yes, some companies have some internal tools, like Jira, some lot of other tools that they use, to do this as well. So that's what I'm saying. I was saying, so you keep your process names here. If you want to give any so there'll be some IDs that you allocate to your process. Comparatively, your process might have some sub processes, so you might name it there. If you have any ID, so let's say my first process is A, my sub process is A.0.1, so something like that, we name it. So then your activities, then your priorities, then your each phase starts. So actually it was like this. There's no fill. So when you are into the solutioning phase, so definitely you would be working on the solutioning side. So this becomes your document that you need to update at the solution design. So your as is process, where you are expecting the business to give you the documentation and the design diagram. So for as is process, you will have a status, you will have a baseline due date, you will have an actual delivery date. Then for video recording, so generally sometime we ask the business to give a video recording of the entire process, right? So for this you can also keep a track whether the status it's given or not, what is the baseline by which they need to share, what is the actual due date, and then the creation of PDD. Similarly, status, due date, actual delivery date, and then probably the handover or the approval part comes in. So then when we talk about build, right, so build is nothing but your project development, so where you are kind of you know uh, developing the bot. So hand over to the developer. So have you handed over all the documentation and the requirements to the developer? What is the status, what is the due date, what is the actual delivery date? Then what are the test scenarios explained for that entire requirement or the process? What are the test datas available or not? So what is the status? What is the UAT plan? So if once it goes into testing, once you are into the testing side, you have sub processes for testing, which is going to be your UAT plan, then your normal testing, your user manual creation, you're training the client for how to run the bot and everything, what are the lessons learned, and your final handover documentation when you are kind of moving the bot to the production. So it's just a sample documentation where you analyze the progression of the project along with the development, the subsequent activities, and each and everything that you are doing can be tracked. Because if you might as a business analyst might be working in 2 3 projects at the same time, so how do you recall what you have done on which date for which project? So that's what you do. So you keep a traceability matrix for each of your projects with these parameters in line. So anything goes wrong or any management requires any report of the project work, you just go and share them this file. Hey, please, you drop an email, PFA, everything is available here. So that becomes easy for you to kind of stop answering to many people and just share one documentation. So that's the purpose of having a proper traceability matrix. And this is just a sample case where you can have a lot of additions, deletions based on your requirement. But just to have a track of it, each phase, each sub process, start line, base due date, activity completion, everything can be tracked. Right? Any questions on this, guys, on the documentation?
That looks good. So it's gonna be like a template that we can get from the client, or it's us
No,
who
no, no.
come up with
That
it, this whole thing
no,
it looks like.
no. This is a template which, if you are given the work to maintain the traceability matrix, it's a sample reference you can take and you can build up your own template. And based on you, and you would be knowing what are the sub processes that you have. Under testing, you might only have UAT and user manual. You do not have a training session, so you can omit training. And you might have another module under build. So so you have to add that. So this is just a template, so you can keep on adding and deleting it based on the phases that you want to follow, so that you can update it accordingly.
Yeah,
So
I'm
that's
just saying, like, do you get it from the client at the project, or is this something that I probably need to come with when I go to a project?
you should be, I mean, as a business analyst, yeah, you should be going with this in handy with yourself, rather than expecting someone to give it to you, because it's the reflection of the work that you're going to do. So if your project manager says, hey, please go ahead and move ahead with the tracing of the project, so your project manager might also be held up with 2 3 projects, and he gives you the control. So you also might be working in some other project, and a new project has come in, so how many projects you will recall? So that's the way you develop the template for a traceability matrix. Whenever you are going for a review of the project on a, you might have scrum calls, you might have delivery meetings, you might have session meetings to check the updates, where you are tracking whether the requirements are in line, the developers are not developing something different. So all stakeholders will be available, right? So based on that, you just update it at the back end. This is the development that is happening today, 30% complete, base deadline is this, actual deadline is this. So every update that you receive, you come at each and every phase of your solution build and testing. Yes, any support, you just update the data accordingly and keep it for yourself. Where is the template found? There's no template. It's a self creation template which I did. So I'll share this dumb sample template in the Dropbox. You can download it for your reference, but yes, it's not, nothing goes hard and fast. You can go ahead and apply your own sub processes, process names that definitely will not match with the projects that you're going to work, but it's a template that you can use and create a sheet of your own that you can use as a traceability matrix. Right, perfect. Moving on to the session, yeah, so with the slides, so yeah, I think so this is what, with the traceability matrix, now we're going to look into some sample test cases. How does a test case looks like and what is it? So you can see on the screen there are some diagrams that are there with tabular columns which shows these are test cases. So I just wanted to show you guys that when a test cases is developed, this is how it is developed. So let's say we have a test case for a login. Now, if the bot is trying to log into an application, what could be the test cases? What could be the steps? So the bot would need an user ID, the bot would need a password, and if user ID and passwords are valid, the bot will log in. So if you see at the very top of the screen, it says login. So it's just a part of some steps. So they have numbered the steps as T92, 93, 94. You can have your own numbering. Okay. So here it says 92 is user ID, which must not be blank. Obviously, if you are trying to log into an application, you cannot have your user ID as blank. Definitely your password must not be blank. And finally, is your user ID and password valid? And then it goes for successful well entry. So if you have to kind of create a test case or keep a track of your test case, how do you do it? So you first name it as test. Okay, it's a login. So you mark what are the steps that going to happen. So if you see here, step 1, our sample test case, verify login. When correct ID and password is entered, it should log in successfully. So that's the purpose. So that's why they have said test case 1. What is the test case number? It's 1. What is the test case name? They are verifying the login. What are the steps? The bot should log into the page, enter the user ID, enter the password, click the login button. What is the test data? If you see, they might have given some dummy login credentials for the bot. Obviously, we need it. So the test data is also added. So bot will be using a dummy data where user ID might be, let's say, Guru99 and the password is 1234 and expected result. So when the bot testing is happening, they have to update the specific test case in that part. If the login successful, if the bot is able to log in successfully with this user ID and password, the team or whoever is it gonna update login successful. If it is failing, they have to mention invalid login is not working. So if the bot has failed, so they have to mention it as login unsuccessful. So all the unsuccessful steps has to be reverted back with the bug to the developer so that they can fix it, right? So this is how your test case generally looks like. You might have test cases. Now you might have a business requirement or an exception. So if it's a business requirement, you can mark it as a BR. If it's a test case, so these are some sample view you can see. So for example, there is a requirement. If the bot is not able to log in and log out of the application, what is going to happen? You need to follow. So similarly, the variables are also marked as in a table. If you could see on the right hand side, it says BR B1. Module name is login and log out. Applicable roles is a customer login. Description, a customer can log in using this page. So might be, they are doing two things. One login is for a customer, one login is for a manager. So they are trying to keep a track of what is a customer login and what is a manager login. Obviously the rights and the credentials and everything for a customer and a manager would be different. So if there are any such deviation, you create a separate table, you mark it as an exception, right? So this is how your test cases generally looks like. You create a table with your test case number, test case name, what are the steps that are going to be performed on that test case, your test data that you need, and what is the expected result. Okay, perfect. So with this, we kind of have this conclusion to the session. So guys, do you have any questions on this test case that you are trying to see on the you are getting to see on the screen? So anything that you want to know, please ask, because your assignment's gonna be there for this week, and tomorrow's session we're gonna be having the last session for this course, and we're gonna have a quick recap and brush up all the important modules, right? So before winding up, so the test cases are the ones which you also might need to require to perform as a part of your business analyst job. Yep. So if you have any questions, you can let me know before we explain you the assignment for this session.
For me, looks good.
Okay, perfect. So with respect to the assignments, yeah, so you have to, I'll be uploading this dummy or the sample traceability matrix documentation, right? So I want you guys to kind of prepare your own traceability matrix for two test cases. So for example, you have seen here, I have a traceability matrix of a sample test case, which was for login. So under login, I'm trying to verify user ID is not blank, password is not blank, and if user ID and password are valid, login is successful. These are the three. So I want you guys to prepare a similar traceability test case. Sorry, I think I just ran to the last page. Yeah. So please go ahead and create a similar traceability test case for verifying the email address format for an user input. So for example, the bot needs, the user is entering his or her email ID, okay, or the bot is entering an email ID as a username into a tool to log in. So what are the verification or the test cases steps should be followed as a part of email address verification or email address field format validation is your first traceability, where you have to develop something like this. Okay, and then verify the password validation as per the password set rules. So for example, if a user is entering a password, so let's say when you do attended automation, the bot might give a pop-up to the user to enter his or her email address and password. Okay, now if you are entering an email address, it has to have a proper format. Now you cannot put at the rate at the beginning and enter something without a .com or a domain. Doesn't work, right? So those validations needs to be done by the bot. So if you are deviating from that email format, the bot should give you a message, incorrect email address format. So that's why I expect you to create a traceability table where email address format is validated with certain test cases, and the password that you are giving, okay, and the password that you are typing also is validated by the bot. Okay, so if a bot is validating the password that you are entering, your password must have a special character, your password must have a lowercase character, your password must have a digit, and your password must have special characters like @ ampersand, etc. So when you are validating a test case for a password validation, consider that you should have a special character, lowercase, and a digit, based on which you have to develop a similar test case. So you should have a test case ID, anything that you can give. Test case 1 should be your email validation, test case 2, and then you have a tr test case right? So you can mark it as tier 1, tier 2, something like that. Then you should have the test steps. So for email address format validation, what are the steps the bot is going to do? Test data, you can put any dummy username or any sample username as per your convenience. That's fine, because it's just for, you know, assignment purpose. And then you have the test result. So obviously we are not doing an eventual testing, so you can keep that expected result as blank. But I want you to keep, so your main focus would be on the third step, which is the test steps. So if I'm validating an email address, what are the steps I'm going to follow? What are the test steps I need to validate for both password and email address? So that's the main. Okay, your test data doesn't matter, your expected result doesn't matter, because we are not testing anything with respect to a live bot. Your test IDs and everything are just dummy, but your validation of the assignment would be happening on the test steps that you add for your email address validation and your password validation, right? Perfect. So any doubt with the assignment, guys? Nope. Okay. Perfect. So I think then we are good for the day, right? So I would say that, yeah, please go through all the, sessions and everything I have uploaded on the Dropbox as well. And today's slides also I'm going to upload, right? So go through it. If you have any specific queries on any module, you can ask me tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we're going to recap all the 10 modules with the important aspects, kind of a, quick brush up. Okay. Perfect. Thanks everyone for your time then. Yeah, we'll catch
Thank
up
you. Well,
tomorrow.
thanks.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
bye bye.